So really saw some exceptional speeches today in the new student division. I had the pleasure of judging a couple of those rounds and I was blown away. So I'm really excited for our finalists. Congrats to our finalists. Just a couple things. I encourage our speakers to time themselves. I will cut a speaker off if they go over time, particularly during, cross-examination. If they are asking a question, it goes over time. I'll give the answer about 10 seconds or so to answer the question. But I'm sure we're kind of used to the rodeo by now. Really excited to get started. So Shreya, if you could get started, show me your note card before you deliver your opening speech. And yeah, let's get it started.
Hey, here's my note card.
Excellent. You.
Thanks. During the pandemic, when doing school or work from home, were you actually focused on what you're doing? I know I wasn't. I would ignore whatever the teacher would say and watch YouTube. My friends would disregard the whole lesson and play games. I know when I was physically in school, I'd never blatantly neglect my schoolwork like that. Could it be the environment I was in was just not efficient? Today, I'm going to argue that working in person in the office is more advantageous than remote work because of three reasons. One, it establishes higher accountability. Two, has fewer distraction. And three, ensures efficient communication. My first claim is being physically available in your work environment establishes higher accountability. When you're in the office, you tend to have a higher employee instructing you what needs to be completed and finished that day. With the higher employee's presence, you will work more accountably because one, they're physically next to you telling you what to do. Two, you want to look good and have a good impression on them. In the office, there's going to be a quiet, productive mood set throughout it. With that vibe set in place, you will work more accountably because you're physically in the place where work is supposed to be completed. According to a Stanford analysis, productivity rates were 10 to 20% lower at home than in the office because people were not focused and they weren't getting feedback on their work. This proves that people aren't as accountable at home than in the office. In summary, when you're productive and efficient in your workspace, it holds you accountable for work to be completed. Moving on to our next point, having distractions online and around you can interrupt your work. I, like a lot of people in the pandemic, had to do school through home through a device. I never struggled with school that much until that year, but I did realize that working from home and doing school from home is actually quite similar. Like how people were getting distracted while doing their assignments, they can get distracted while doing work as well. Data from Upgraded Points shows that 75% of people working from home are actually scrolling through social media. 70% of people are shopping online, and 53% of people are watching movies or TV. This completely proves the fact you can get extremely off task and distracted while working at home. The online shopping platforms and social media can hinder your work ethic, and when you have those distractions right next to you when you work, completely destroys it. Other things like household chores, personal priorities, and even your family members sometimes can be a huge distraction. Data from Upgraded Points shows that 72% of people working from home are just doing household chores. When you get distracted, you tend to ignore your work for a period of time. And then when you ignore your work, you gradually lose that motivation to continue that work. Overall, having distractions around you can hinder your work ethic, which is one of the key points in how you work efficiently. Next, we need to address that working in person ensures efficient communication. In the office, communication is easy and well timed. You can problem solve more efficiently in the office rather than being online in a meeting and just constantly talking over each other. You can express your feelings, you can be more innovative, you can elaborate what you want to say. It's so much easier to do that in person rather than being online and just talking to a screen. Government employees report that they prefer working in person rather than online because communication travels faster. The reason communication travels so fast is you're physically in the workspace with other people. If you need a quick response to something, you could just knock on someone's door and get your answer. While online is so much harder to do that because it takes time for them to respond, wait for them to answer, and find a time where you can actually schedule that meeting. Finally, communication is easy and efficient in the office because it takes less time for them to respond and you can easily get a hold of someone. Working in the office brings people together to hold themselves accountable. Distractions can be a huge red flag in order for you to be productive and efficient. Hire employees and other people can hold you accountable to make sure you don't get distracted. Efficient communication ensures that task delivery is on point. Ultimately, when you're working in the office, it not only holds you, but other people accountable for work. You not only do you get to work in a distraction-free zone, you get easy communication and deliver your best work to your company proudly, therefore proving that working in person is more advantageous than remote work. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Lynn to cross-examine.
So you mentioned that it is harder to elaborate with remote work,
Yes, sorry.
but can't you elaborate like in a meeting setting?
Yes, what I was trying to say that yes, you are right. You can elaborate over a meeting, but it's way harder to do that when you're looking at a computer screen. Maybe some people aren't focused. Maybe they're doing whatever. It's when you're looking at a screen, it's so much harder to do that. Well, in person, people can see your tone. They can see your hand gestures. They can see what you're actually thinking and what you're doing because they can physically see you elaborate and you can express your thoughts and feelings.
But elaborating is through words, right? And I can tell facial expressions through a screen.
Yes, but it's a lot harder. Yes, you can see that through a screen. I agree. But it's a lot harder to see like what you're actually thinking online because even though you can see us through a screen, you can't tell like what I really want to say. You can't tell my body posture. You can't tell like what I want to gesture and everything.
All right, so now I'll move on to your second point where
Yeah.
you say that people are have their own personal priorities, and you mentioned something with chores, but the supplies with chores cost the money which you actually make from work. So isn't that self motivation to keep going to buy the supplies you need for your own personal priorities?
Sorry, can you clarify that again? I'm sorry.
It's like you need to spend money on the things you use for your own personal priorities. So
Yes.
that's actually motivation to hold you accountable to work hard.
Yes, I agree. That could motivate you to continue working, but also household chores, they could get in the way of your accountability and your productivity while working at home. I'm like, yes, you could be very much productive and be accountable to for those household chores, but it can also be seen as a distraction and hinder your work ethic.
Okay, so then you could do the chores during your break because in in-person work you also have breaks.
Yes, but as I said, when you get distracted from your work and do things like household chores, you gradually lose that motivation to continue that work because you're doing whatever, like you're doing household chores, you're doing something else. Because when you get distracted, I don't really think not a lot of people want to go back to that work. Like they lose that motivation to continue the work that they started before the break.
And that is
That's correct.
time.
Okay,
Good
thank you.
job, speakers. So next up, we have Naz, and she'll be cross-examined by Shreya. Naz, can I see your note card? Perfect. Thank you.
Can I just start right now?
Yep, you are good to start.
A rectangular screen is what has become of your job. You are a remote worker. No, you don't come into work every day to meet the faces of your coworkers. The unique environment you call your office is no more. A screen is your best friend. You simply have no motivation to work. This is the reality for most remote workers. According to the LA Times, workers work on average 10 to 20% less at home than on company premises, with issues ranging from productivity to depression, from the absence of community to economic difficulty. The disadvantages of remote work far outweigh its benefits. Number one, in office work boosts productivity. According to Anita Latink at Microsoft, fully remote work is associated with about 10% less productivity caused by challenges such as communication, barriers to mentoring, culture building, and self motivation. Many experts find remote work harmful to productivity. An office is specifically designed for the productivity of its workers and has all of the necessary resources for facilitating exactly this. So while productivity is crucial, economic benefits are also worth mentioning. Number two, in-office work sustains urban economies. According to World Bank blog, cities have always been the nexus of prosperity, job creation, poverty reduction when firms are located closer to the labor market and to potential clients. Urban economies are full of vendors, shops, as well as transportation providers, taxis, cars, and small businesses, which all risk disappearing to the detriment of the economy. Well, economic benefits are very, very important. They have a direct tie to in-office culture. Number three, in-office work fosters transparency and connection. According to Square.com, in-person meetings facilitate transparent communication through nonverbal cues, body language, eye contact, and the ability to instantly ask questions without reducing the risks of misunderstandings often associated with texts or emails. In addition to this, Mia Barnes, the editor-in-chief of Body and Mind magazine, says remote work can blur the lines between work and normal life, with workers feeling increasingly isolated and lonely. In-office work allows engagement and collaboration. Coming to the office separates home from life, and it provides a clear boundary without distraction. This is immensely important to worker mental health, where workers can understand where work life ends and home life actually begins. Being confined to a window on a phone or computer screen can never come close to in-person social interactions. Therefore, this is not a sustainable scenario for humans. It is simply against our nature. In-office work is a benefit to productivity. It is a benefit to the economy. It fosters transparency and is a benefit to mental health. When compared to remote work, in-office work is the sustainable option. Let's embrace it for a brighter future. Thank you.
Thank you. And Shreya will cross-examine 2 minutes, starting when Shreya asks her first question.
As you said in your thing, when going into the office and coming home, there's a balance. How is there not a balance from just getting up from your work chair and just going to do your personal life? And how do you see, what's the difference between the balance?
Okay, so there are actually a lot of differences. When you're in remote work, there is, I guess, this built-in like flexibility. You don't have a set amount of work hours. Like in the office, when you work in person, your boss tells you like, good morning, everyone, you should be here. And then your boss tells you when to go home. In remote work, you don't have that. You make a choice to get on your Zoom, you make a choice to go to work and to get off of your computer. So I think there's a lot of differences because it's controlled by the actual worker. It may be sometimes hard to tell where to stop and where to end, something that the supervisor, the manager does, and that lacks in remote work.
Okay. My second question is, what's the difference between talking on Zoom, because you're still talking to someone, and like you said, you can elaborate more, but how can you not elaborate on Zoom than in person? Like, what do you see the difference in?
Okay, so based off of the question that you're asking, there are a lot of differences, and this includes both to mental health, but also to actual connection. On a Zoom screen, as I mentioned several times, it is a window. You only see one fragment of the person. You are not there in person. You do not have the intimacy, the eye contact. You do not see all parts of the person's body. There are several distractions, whether it be looking at the screen and several other distractions on the computer, and things around you. In a meeting, in person, you have eye contact, you have intimacy, you have so many things that lack, that remote work lacks. In addition to this, the mental health aspect that I mentioned, it is a window. You are completely alone in the room. You do not have that warmth, that intimacy, as I continue to say.
And that is time. Thank you, speakers. Next up, we have Natalie with cross-examination by Naz.
Sorry, let me just pull up the timer. Here's my.
Looks good. Thank you.
Judge, picture this: going to your normal 9 to 5 job while still being happier and less stressed and being able to work right away. This is the beauty of remote work. Remote work is our future. Remote work is a golden staircase just begging us to take that first step into happiness. Remote work, where practical, is on balance more advantageous than in-office work. I will be going over 3 points: balance, boost, and embetterment. Balance being the work-life balance, boost being the increase in productivity, and embetterment being the environmental impact. So let's go over the work-life balance. Because of the flexibility of the job, you are able to get so much more work done and still be able to handle your own life. For example, taking your kids to your appointment, taking care of your children, or even if you're still a student and you're able to manage your school and work balance, still being able to do this while still getting your work done is the beauty of remote work. According to a study by Owl Labs, 50% of remote workers reported increased work-life balance, and according to the United States Psychological Association, 60% have lower stress rates, which is overall just boosting morale incredibly. The overall impact of this is the mental health. Because of this mental health impact, right now, America is in the lowest mental health state that we've been in the entire time America has been a country. We are in the lowest state ever, and we are just urging to take that first step on the staircase, that first step on that golden staircase, like I mentioned in my introduction, to get out of it. Remote work is the way we get out of it. Our second reasoning for this topic is that it increased productivity because they have the flexibility and are able to measure them, measure how much work they can get done. Like I know how much work I need to get done, you know how much work you need to get done, and what time frame that is. Because of this, they are able to time frame and organize the amount of time that they spend. According to a study by Stanford, 13% of workers reported increased productivity than counterpart to their the people who worked in office. Also, flex jobs reported that Yahoo self-admitted that 35 to 40% of their workers were more productive when they were online, meaning that they had more productivity online than they do in person. Just overall shows how the productivity increases, which links to our impact, which is the economic benefit. Because not only is there an economic benefit for these capitalist companies, no, it's for the workers too. Because the workers right now are what's important. We should be looking at their best interest in mind, and right now they are making the money. So let's go into our third and final point, the environmental impact. Because of the less cars on the road, this will also save money for the people, but it also saves our environment by leaving the gasoline off the road and the CO2 emissions go down. Because of this, because of a study of the Global CO2 Project, there were 70% less CO2 in global emissions during COVID-19 when everything was online, further showing how with remote work, we can help step in the right direction instead of stepping back. Also, let's go into the 4 reasons why the global emissions are bad. 1, extreme weather. 2, higher temperatures. 3, biodiversity. And 4, less money. But let's focus on that third reason, low biodiversity. Because it is our job as humans to not only care about ourselves and our environment, but to care about the future generations and the animals. Let's look at all the livestock we are hurting by these CO2 emissions. And let's look at our children and our children's generations. All of this will go into dirt. It could crumble to the ground if we do not do something fast. And remote work is our way out of this. So, Judge, I hope you can confidently say the next time someone asks you why not go into the office, you can confidently answer with the future doesn't commute. Thank you.
So now we have Naz, who will be cross-examining Natalie.
Okay, can I start? Is that? So, towards the end, you talked a lot about the environment and carbon being released into the world. I have a question for you. Are cars the only source for commuting to work? Yes or no, please?
No, but they're a major factor.
No? Okay. Thank you. Next question. Are cars the only source for for carbon emissions and for the environment to be in risk?
So you're actually asking like a complex question. No, they're not, but they're a major
No, okay, thank you. That's all I need. It's a yes or no question. Thank you. Okay, moving on to this, I want to talk about the productivity that you discuss. So you say, isn't this correct? You said that remote work has more productivity, ensures more productivity. Was that not what you said?
Yes, it does.
Okay. So how can you be sure with the flexibility, which is something that you also talked about, right?
Correct.
How can you ensure that workers are actually disciplined and are actually doing their jobs the amount of times they need to be done? How can you ensure that workers have this discipline, that all workers have this discipline?
Right. So basically, because they still have deadlines, right? They still have people who are watching over them, their managers and stuff. So they don't do this. They still have that risk of being fired or getting getting demoted or stuff, right? So they still have this risk, and it's still all possible. Just because they're online work doesn't mean that it's completely out the window that they can get fired.
Yes, but what about the hours that they need to work? What if they're barely meeting the deadlines? They're not putting in the necessary amount of work. They're slacking off at their jobs. And although they are meeting the supposed deadlines, they are slacking. And yeah.
That would be up to the managers to see what they need to do, right? Obviously, it will differ from every single person to person, but it will still be up to those managers to see if they're best fit for the company.
Okay.
That is time. Good job, speakers. Next up, we have Naisha, and she'll be cross-examined by Natalie.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
For the timer. We all went through COVID. It was a rough patch, but it's one that we may have enjoyed. The truth is that we were attending school from our beds and we were just doing everything from the comfort of our own home. I mean, we almost thought of it as a dream, but until it turned into our worst nightmare. Because we were so isolated in our homes, not being able to interact with one another, and not being able to meet with people or even be able to socialize. It was such a rough path that we weren't able to climb over until we got out of this whole situation called COVID. But the truth is, how productive were we really when we were just sitting on our beds and trying to do our work? I mean, it's hard to really be productive if we're feeling comfort in our beds. And how could we be productive if we would use internet issues as a way to tell our bosses that we haven't completed a work or trying to avoid them? The truth is we can't be productive if we're working from home, which is why in-office work is more advantageous than remote work. And today, Judge, I will tell you why. For my first claim, I will tell you about social life and interactions and mental health. The truth is that offices give the opportunity for people to have daily interactions, face-to-face interactions, which combat loneliness, which is something we had all felt during COVID. For this, they allow people to build a sense of community because they're able to talk to one another. This also allows for collaboration, which can help with someone's assignment. According to the the American Psychological Association, social interactions typically reduce stress and offers more happiness for workers. Also, work design says that more employees were stress-free when they were in office because they were surrounded by people who supported them, which is so hard to replicate when we are remote working. For my second claim, in-office work provides chances for promotion in comparison to remote work. The truth is that in office, it is easier for managers to recognize their employees' efforts and look at their leadership skills. It's actually true that managers are able to see how their employees are able to handle certain situations, which can help them get a promotion. In comparison to remote work, it's harder to see what they're doing and how they're doing it. Typically, they miss out on opportunities or informal and important interactions, which can lead to career growth. According to LinkedIn, actually employers who work in office are 2.5% more likely to get promoted in comparison to remote workers. Also, 65% of employees, according to McKinsey, are typically promoted because their managers are able to see them in person. Then, lastly, I will talk to you about productivity and economy. Productivity, according to the Harvard Business Review, there are less distractions when we are in office because offices are designed to make sure that people are staying focused and that they're doing their work. This also allows them to help with the economy because the truth is, the economy creates demand for all kinds of companies all around, meaning one company can create 5 other businesses or jobs, for example, restaurants, retail, anything. But overall, it's because of the productivity, which can not only help the economy, but also economy all over. It helps with the whole community. Because of their support, the whole community infrastructure helps, and also they have economy stability. Judges, I'm telling you why we need to implement more in-office work because we both know that we can't do our work just from our home and without being distracted. Thank you.
Thank you. We will have Natalie cross-examining.
Sorry, one sec. Okay, so in your first point, you brought up like how like the mental health of the workers, correct?
Mhm.
But will the mental health decrease because they're being like overworked and having like their boss constantly breathing down their neck instead of doing remote work?
Well, we're not talking about their bosses like breathing on their neck. We're just saying that they have a support system. It actually helped them because in remote work, you're not able to get that kind of support that you're able to get in office. So it's actually the complete opposite.
can't you get that help from like your parent, like your family, or your like the people around you who aren't your direct workers?
But wouldn't it be hard to ask your family members for help? Especially say if I was into IT, how can I ask my family members for help about an IT assignment? I'd have to ask my coworkers, correct? And that's much easier to collaborate with people in office.
Okay, and then for your second point about like, the promotion opportunities, like I'm just basically summing it up. But are you basically saying that there are no promotions when you're doing remote work?
I'm not saying that there's no promotion. I'm just saying that there's a higher ability to get promoted when you're in office because managers can recognize that. It's you can obviously be recognized in terms of your work like when you're remote, but you're more likely to be recognized for your efforts in office because you may show your leadership skills which go beyond just your efforts or your work.
Okay, and then for your like third point about productivity, would it basically be like, can't you say like, oh, I know how to manage my time effectively and you know how to manage your time effectively? So wouldn't the workers know how to manage their own time effectively?
Can you rephrase your question? I don't really understand what you mean.
Like, can't the workers decide how to manage their time effectively to be productive?
I mean, that goes all over, but I think when you're in office, there are no distractions around you. No matter how much you may like have a whole structure on how you're gonna work, if you have distractions near you, you're bound to get distracted, honestly. It
But
obviously
aren't your fellow coworkers who you claim to be their friends distractions?
no, because your boss would be overseeing your work and everything, but that can't happen online because you could be on a Zoom meeting with just another coworker and you could be talking about 1,000 things and your boss wouldn't know about it. So that means you would be procrastinating your work more and more.
And that is time. Good job, speakers. Okay, so next up, we're gonna have Tali speaking. Let's see, can we unpin? I'm unable to.
Are we allowed to use timers or stopwatches?
Absolutely, definitely.
And can I just go whenever I'm ready? Okay.
Whenever you're ready.
3, 2, 1. I want you to imagine that you're in an office as the air conditioner blares and the keyboards type, and as the person next to you is chatting with their coworkers, your it's just ear splitting. And I want you to take all this noise away. This is what working from home feels like. It's when you get to create your space where you're more productive and you're a happier person. This is why online work is more advantageous than in person work because of savings, happier workers, and climate change. Reason number one, savings. The average individual spends 45% of their income from USA Today on only the commute to work and back. This changes everything because if the average worker is spending $8,466 on just the commute to work and back, this is huge. This could change many lives. After all, AAPR says that 61% of people over 60 worry they don't have enough to retire. This could change many people's lives because they don't have enough money to get where they want to be. So this could add to their savings, let them invest, let them change their own lives and write their own stories. Reason number two, happier workers. The NIH says that working from home is promoting happiness, in quotes. Why is this good? This is good because having happier workers creates a better work environment. What do I mean by that? I mean that when you are nicer to your coworkers, they're nicer back, and everyone's just a happier human. Plus, it increases your productivity by 13%. This could be huge for doctors, lawyers, call center workers, or any job. And reason number three, climate change. After all, 3 million greenhouse gases are put into the air every year from flex jobs. 54% of a average individual's carbon footprint is made up of only their drive to work. This commute makes a huge change because if we stop this commute,
We could fix the climate crisis. We could make a huge step into somewhere that we need to be. This is a huge moment that we need to step forward into. Because of savings, happier workers, and climate change, we need to. Online work is more advantageous than in-person work. After all, we have 8 years left. 8 years before climate change is irreversible. We have 8 years left before we can do nothing. This is our moment to shine. This is our moment to take a step forward into the place we need to be and change the world. Now, are we going to go to work and do nothing? Or are we going to stay home? Are we going to stay home, work hard, and change the world? Thank you.
Thank you. So next we have Naisha cross-examining.
So my first question is, you talk about commuting and how like there was a specific number that you talk about. Can you tell me that number again?
Do you mean the $8,466 from USA Today or the 45%?
I'm talking about the 45%.
Okay.
So for that, would you say that we only commute, like, do people only commute to work and then home? Or are there any other like commuting? Do they go anywhere else?
While there is other commuting, that is normally not as much useful and not as repetitive as the drive to work and back.
So you said that commuting outside of work isn't that useful.
No, it's not as repetitive.
Not as repetitive, but don't people have a life outside of their just commuting to work, just home, like?
Yes, however, their commute to work is every single day or 5 days a week. Normally, people hang out with their friends 3 days a week. And if they do, most of the time they'll be picked up by their friends, or maybe they'll go on a walk together. I know it's a very common activity with adults around 40 to 50.
But are we only talking about hanging out with friends or walking around the city? We're talking about daily things that people may do. For example, people may go grocery shopping anywhere, like daily activities like that. Doesn't that take commute as well?
Yes, but that is about once to twice a week for the average individual.
Also, but wouldn't these activities happen at least once a day? Wouldn't someone have to run an errand at least once a day?
I wouldn't say it's once a day, but yes, I understand your point that people do something once a day. However, the once a day trip is not as much as the 5 days a week commute that is substantially longer than your normal commute to the grocery store.
That is time. Good job, speakers. Up next, we have Lynn with cross-examination by Tali.
Do you need to check my note card?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Do you remember when we had COVID and everything was remote? Were you actually productive or were you slacking off a bit? Because I know for sure that I was definitely slacking off. During 4th grade, I would always watch YouTube while doing my classes, and in 5th grade, I realized that I was so behind on all my schoolwork. This shows that remote work, where practical and on balance, is actually not more advantageous than in-person work. Because everything requires in-person work and can be done by in-person work, it's more productive and you can make more human connections. Our first claim is that everything requires in-person work and can be done by in-person work. Remote work can be okay for research and ideas, but how do you take those research and ideas one step further? You need to communicate them with other people and actually connect your ideas together to make one final product. In fact, the IESE says that in-person work has a 34 times succession rate than remote work of communication. Let's take cancer research, for example. Cancer research can be okay at home with all the research and your ideas, but you need to connect those ideas to actually find the cure. And then you can test it right in the lab. There's also tasks that are just way too complex for remote work. Things like architecture that take a lot of workers together to collaborate on one final product. If you try to do this remotely, it's going to affect the quality of your work, and therefore, we're going to have no innovation because no one's taking their work one step further. Our second claim is productivity. Without your boss watching you and your coworkers peer pressuring you, how are you going to stay the same amount of productive? In fact, research shows that 20 to 10% productivity is lost through remote work. This is because you have distractions right next to you, like your phone, and so many things you can do on your laptop. You can game, you can shop, and you can go on social media. But it's not just your fault. When you have a question in in-person work, you can instantly go ask your boss, and they'll instantly give you feedback and answer your question. But with remote work, it's a bit different. You can email your boss, but then you'll get an answer hours later. And what are you going to do between those hours? You're not going to be as productive because you certainly don't know what to do. And so, without the amount of productivity that we have now, we're going to lose so much work hours and lose so much innovation and also have a global slowdown. Our third and last claim is human connections. Human connections are so important for human life. In in-person work, there are so many ways you can make human connections. You can talk to your coworkers while getting a cup of coffee. You can even talk to your boss. You can ask your coworkers questions. There's infinite possible ways. But with remote work, you're at home alone and working by yourself. In fact, according to the American Medical Association, 25% of lonely people report to have depression. But in-person work has more perks. You can also have more social skills and you can learn how to present. These two skills are so essential for our whole entire globe because imagine if our world leaders didn't know how to do these things. If they didn't know how to do these things, our countries would not be able to come together and work on how to improve our entire world. And we could also have global conflict. So, in conclusion, we believe that remote work, where practical and on balance, is actually not more advantageous than in-person work because everything requires in-person work and can be done by in-person work. It's more productive and you can make more human connections. So, next time when you're finding a job, try to opt for in-person work because you can improve the world around you so much more and find a better job for yourself too. Thank you.
Thank you. And Tali for cross-examination.
How would you respond to the claim that architecture is actually a mostly online job that usually uses online work?
I don't think architecture is mostly online unless you have a statistic for that, because architecture takes a lot of collaboration between every single person, and with that collaboration through remote work, you're going to have the affection of the quality of the work.
Basically, I have a personal statistic. My parents are engineers and they work with many architects. And the people they work with, at least, all work from home and they actually own like some of their own companies. And it's really cool, actually, because they all work from home and they take Zoom meetings. And how would you respond to the fact that they work on Zoom meetings and that's how they communicate?
Okay, but we had to look at, I'm looking at the architects that make like buildings, like ginormous buildings, and they create like works of art as their work, and that takes collaboration. And if you look at the past examples, when there was no remote work, there was so much better architecture too.
I know that's what my parents do too, but anyway, it's fine. Basically, your reason number 2 is productivity and how peer pressure creates accountability. How would you respond that the peer pressure and accountability can lead to substantial stress for people and lead to like depression?
I'm not saying like peer pressure as in they're like breathing down your neck type of peer pressure. It's like your coworkers are working on something and they already did like a slide and you haven't done anything. That's going to encourage you to actually work and not actually put you into this so much stress that you're not going to be able to work. And I'm pretty sure that's cross.
That is time. Good job, speakers. The panel of judges and I will do our ballots now. You all made it very difficult for us, but thank you. Give yourselves a round of applause. That was another exceptional round, so good work.
Thank you so much, Coach Sam. You guys, I truly enjoyed watching that round. Wow, you guys are doing a fantastic job. Again, I just want to highlight that these are our new to Capitol debate students, and you guys just blew it out of the park. So thank you so much. Here's how this is going to work moving forward. You guys will go ahead and turn your cameras off. Again, congratulations, successful completion of finals. And you'll stay in this room. I'm going to ask now that our returning or our experienced group goes ahead and turns on your cameras. Now we're going to transition to our experienced group finals. Our esteemed judges for this round are going to be Coach Kylie, Coach Rob, and myself. So we're really excited. So once we see everybody's camera on, same thing that I asked for our other group, just make sure that you go ahead and check blazers, shirts tucked in, make sure your hair looks the way you want it. Just go ahead and double check everything looks great. Again, you guys did fantastic today. We're so excited to see you speak. Let's see, everybody have note cards. Note cards are ready. Perfect. Awesome. Okay, so really quickly, I'm going to run through our order, and then let's see if I can also, not sure if I can put it in the chat, but starting first, we're going to have Anya. Then we will have Braylee. Am I pronouncing it correctly? Braylee? Okay. Braylee. And then we have Niharika, Elena, Arna, and then Stella. So now listen closely. I just want to tell you who you're cross-examining. So make sure that we have the correct person down. So Stella, you will be cross-examining Anya. Anya, you will be cross-examining Braylee. Braylee, you will be cross-examining Niharika. Niharika, you will be cross-examining Elena. Elena, you will be cross-examining Arna. And then Arna, you will be cross-examining Stella. Okay. Are we all set on that? Awesome. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started with Anya. Anya, go ahead and come off mute. I'm going to mute myself, and you are welcome to start whenever you're ready. Judges, are we ready? Perfect. All right, Anya, go ahead and start whenever you're ready.
When the COVID-19 pandemic struck, people all around the world struggled to cope with this disease. People were forced into quarantine, while having to deal with education, health, and social relationships. The virus overwhelmed hospitals and crippled industries of all sorts. It's even changed the way we work. Was it for the better or the worse? That's what we're debating today. I negate the resolution that online work is more advantageous than in-person work for 3 reasons. Reason 1, in-person work provides a more structured environment. Reason 2, in-office work provides more collaboration and socialization. And reason 3, in-office work provides more opportunities for recognitions and promotions. Firstly, I'd like to prove to you that in-office work provides a more structured environment. According to Pauline Sombre, a highly respected expert in hybrid work, states that it has been shown that people who work in person have increased time management, increased productivity, and reduced procrastination. According to Robert Half, a global staffing firm, 25% of people prefer to work only in person, 49% prefer the hybrid model, while only 26% of employees prefer to work fully remote. In fact, even Google and Apple have begun to mandate a return policy of employees to the office for a minimum number of days. This proves that regular work hours and a physical office space signals the brain that it's time for professional tasks, helping to reduce distractions and increase productivity. Secondly, I'd like to demonstrate that online work is not more advantageous than in-person work because in-person work allows for more collaboration and socialization. According to 9 benefits of working in an office, working from the office significantly enhances collaboration and the execution of team projects. The proximity of colleagues within a shared space allows for immediate communication and the seamless exchange of ideas. This is vital for a dynamic collaborative atmosphere. Also, according to an article by LinkedIn published in 2023, face-to-face interactions lead to genuine engagement and real bonds, which is much better than a transactional relationship. This proves that when there is no digital screen to hide behind, it opens people up, creating an atmosphere of trust, a shared purpose, and motivation. Thirdly, I'd like to demonstrate that online work is not more advantageous than in-person work because in-person work provides more opportunities for recognitions and promotions. In fact, An article by the BBC titled Why People Who Work in Person Are Much More Likely to Get Promoted Than Those Who Don't speaks for itself. It states that people who work online are practically invisible, irrelevant, and are much more likely to have their careers stall. Research done by the Stanford School of Business states that the rate at which online workers get promoted was roughly half to those who work in person. This is a dismal statistic. This shows the value of in-person interactions and how they lead to collaboration and opportunities to raise your career trajectory. In conclusion, online work is not more advantageous than in-office work for 3 reasons. Reason 1, there's a more structured environment. Reason 2, there's more collaboration and socialization. And reason 3, there's more opportunities for career promotions. Judge, during COVID-19, it was necessary and inevitable to work online. But now this lack of return is costing us accountability, camaraderie, and success. Our generation is better than this. We need to get out of bed in the morning, get dressed, and carpe diem. This is why, Judge, I urge you to vote con.
Great. Thank you, Anya. Appreciate it. Stella, when you are ready to begin cross-examination, go ahead and come off mute, and we are ready for you.
Okay, if everyone is ready, I will start my cross-examination. All right, 3, 2, 1. So you stated that in your first contention that in person is actually associated with more productivity, correct?
Correct.
So in those studies, do you know how they measured productivity exactly?
I don't know exactly, but probably by the amount of work they got done in a certain amount of time.
Can that be objectively measured?
Well, kind of, because they could show how they're progressing and their promotion rates.
Okay. And how are distractions reduced in an in-office work?
I'm glad you asked. They're reduced because there's no like YouTube, and like you can't go on YouTube because then everyone will see, and then you're an environment of when people are working, so you generally copy them, and also there's no like family members in an office, and they'll distract you less.
Okay. And for your second contention, you stated a better collaboration, correct?
Correct.
All right. So in a meeting space, wouldn't it be easier for a voice not to be heard?
What do you mean by that?
When everyone has come together and they're all stating their opinions and collaborating, wouldn't it be easier for someone's opinions to go unheard and not considered within the idea?
Well, yeah, but it's harder online because of all the glitches and people struggling to hear you. And also, the thing about collaborating online is that it reduces your like critical thinking skills, and they can't like read your expression and know what you're trying to say.
Okay, final question. For your third contention, you stated that you get less promotions if you're online. So, do you know why?
Yes, because as I mentioned in my speech, the workers who work online, they're like forgettable, like, and they're invisible, irrelevant, and their careers are stalled because the CEO doesn't see them, and they don't see them like being leaders and actively doing stuff.
Okay,
Thank you,
that's it. Thank you.
speakers. That's the end of your time. All right, awesome. Next up, we have Braylee. Braylee is going to be cross-examined by Anya. So Anya, make sure you're paying attention. And Braylee, whenever you're ready, I'm going to mute myself and you're good to go.
Okay, is that good positioning?
Yeah, do you have anything to put your computer a little higher up?
Yeah, sorry, I always have this problem.
No, it's okay. We just want to make sure that we get the full effect here. We want to be able to see it.
Is that any better?
Yeah, I think that's good.
Okay.
Great. Thank you, Braylee. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Okay. Productivity rates are dropping as remote work is increasing. Relationships with the outside world are being cut by the isolation in our own homes. This is why I negate the resolution that remote work, where practical, is on balance more advantageous than in-office work. In-person work makes collaboration easier. RobinTower.com says that 71% of employees prefer collaboration. This is because there are no problems such as slow communication via text or email, being cut off or being on hold, or having internet issues with your Zoom meetings or any of those things that I listed. MIT backs this up by saying that remote work ossifies the ability to network and collaborate. This causes a decrease in productivity and efficiency. For my second contention, collaboration is very, very necessary. Working is no longer like writing an essay yourself or doing an assignment yourself like you would if you were in grade school. It's about bringing other people's minds, other people's skill sets, and other people's ideas to the table to create one product and make it the best that it can possibly be. Business FIU did a study called Is My Mic On? They were trying to get it so they could do 60% remote work and 40% in-person work, but they in fact had to do the opposite because they figured out that in-person work is very vital to their company being the best that it can be. Stanford did a study where they gave a group of collaborators a task and they gave a group of individuals a task. And the individuals took 64% longer and did not even make the same level of quality of a product. Atlassian says that in-person working and collaboration makes use of everyone's skill sets, and that is vital. So no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing, the more people you have, the more ideas you have, the more skills you have, the more likely whatever you're doing is going to be successful. And for my third contention, remote work causes relationships to suffer. Relationships with our bosses and our coworkers suffering is a huge issue that we bring to the table when we bring remote work. When you can't see what people are doing, you can't check the authenticity, you can't check if people are being productive all day long, it causes people to cycle back, review, keep checking their employees or their coworkers' work. And when you're going backwards instead of going forwards, it makes it so much less efficient and our work so much less productive. It's about trusting the employees, says Dr. Ravi Gajendran, and he's right. It is about trusting the employees, but remote work makes it a lot harder to do so. And remote work causes isolation, says coworkingresources.com. Because of all of this, I negate the resolution that remote work, where practical, is on balance more advantageous than in-office work. We all want our goods and services and our products to be the best that they can possibly be. And this is not what we encourage when we encourage remote work. Studies say that there's already a 10% decrease in quality of products since remote work has been brought to the table. And the rate is only continuing. Do we want to lose faith in our goods and services, especially if we're on the receiving end? I don't think so. And therefore, I urge a con vote. Thank you.
Great job, really. Thank you so much. Well done. Anya, whenever you're ready to get started with CrossX, go ahead and come off mute.
Okay, so for your third point, you said that relationships with bosses will suffer, correct?
Yes.
And you also said that they can't monitor your work, so they won't know what you're doing, correct?
Yes.
Yes, but are you aware there's certain platforms CEOs use to monitor employees' work?
I mean, I'm sure there's some certain platforms, but it's definitely not as easy to monitor people's work as it is if you're in person.
And they could also see how much work you get done if there's like something you need to fill out.
Well, quality over quantity in that case, but yes.
Okay. And are you aware that you get much more valuable time from working online because you have to drive everywhere?
Can you rephrase the question? I'm sorry.
So you get much more time to do work if you work online because if you work in person, you have to commute and you have to drive your car to work and back.
Well, as my study showed, it's harder because it's harder to collaborate. It actually does take longer to do the work and get to one end goal if you're online. And there are other distractions in a remote environment often.
Well, what if you're in an isolated space for a remote environment and there's nobody bothering you because no one's home during that period of time?
Will that still take you away from your collaboration, as I said in my speech? And collaboration, like my study of Stanford showed, makes work faster and better.
Couldn't collaboration happen through emails or Zoom meeting?
Well, it could happen through that, but as I said in my speech, and specifically to emails, it's not as efficient, it's not as productive.
Thank you, speakers. That's time. Appreciate you both. Great job. All right, next up we have Niharika, who's going to be cross-examined by Braylee. So whenever you are ready, go ahead and come off mute. I'm going to mute myself. And we're ready for you.
Okay. Is this good? Okay. Imagine you are finishing up your work for the day. Instead of finalizing your work, you turn and see a couch, a blanket, and a TV calling your name. You walk straight up to the couch and end up having to work extra every single workday. But on-site workers don't have this issue. They can peacefully finish their work and then go home to relax. That is why I vigorously negate the resolution that remote work is more advantageous than in office. My reasons are there are fewer distractions in the office, you can be more social in the office, and there are more resources in the office. My first reason is that there are fewer distractions in the office than at home. According to Forbes.com, remote work struggles include communication and collaboration, which 20% of people struggle with, loneliness, which another 20% of people struggle with, and not being able to unplug, which 18% of people struggle with. Not being able to unplug is a real issue that many people suffer with, and it's very hard to overcome. Because when you're at home, you're basically at work, so you never leave your office environment. According to Hubstaff.com, 80% of employees working from home get distracted by family, friends, or significant others while working. And 53% of employees find it harder to balance work with personal duties. If you have fewer distractions, you can finish everything quicker and leave. My second reason is that you can be more social in the office than at home. According to New York Times, Gen Z workers are missing out on key soft skills one learns in their first few years of working. For example, leadership, communication, collaboration, and nonverbal communication. When someone first joined their first company, their manager told them that they would have taken them out to lunch and gotten to know them. They didn't get to do that because of COVID-19. And these skills, you need to learn these skills in your first few years of working. My experience during COVID-19 was very difficult because I had just moved to a new school and I didn't make any friends until we finally went on campus. I didn't even talk to anyone. So while I couldn't talk to anyone, the first few days of school, I didn't have any friends. My third reason is that in the office, you have more resources than at home. For example, scientists and other professions need resources that you don't get at home. Employees for collaborating are one resource that you don't get that aren't easy to use while at home. When working in a group, you want a collaborative and communicative work environment, and it's very hard to get that when you have glitchy audios, internet issues, and you're not able to have face-to-face communication. The key part of this discussion is that face-to-face communication is key to learn in your first few years of learning, so you know it not only just for clients and stuff, but also when you're trying to make friends outside the workspace. And if we only do remote work, these soft skills are going to be ripped out of existence. Think about the story I told you earlier. In the office, you may not be as relaxed while you're working, but when you go home, you can relax and just stay there until you have to work the next day. When you're working at home, yes, you'll be more relaxed, but think about it, you're going to have to work extra every workday and even sometimes weekends. That is why I robustly disagree with the resolution that remote work is more advantageous than in person. Thank you. I'm now open to cross-examination.
Awesome. Great job, Niharika. Thank you so much. Braylee, whenever you're ready.
Okay, so how is socializing with your coworkers and things not a distraction?
Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
How is socializing with your coworkers and other employees not a distraction?
It's not a distraction because when you're socializing, you're learning about these soft skills, and these soft skills can be led into clients too.
But are these skills that you're learning are the skills that you're learning the same as doing your work?
Yes, because if you have to, when you're having a client meeting, you don't want to just get to the topic. Then you're there, especially if you're trying to get a new client, it's very difficult to just get straight to the topic and then say, oh yeah, I won't see you until the next meeting.
Okay, but how can you possibly be doing your work if you're learning all of these social skills? Are you actively doing your work?
Yes, you have to be able to manage all that. If you're working at home, yes, you may not have to manage all that at the same time, but you still need to be able to learn it.
Okay. So then you had a point. Can you clarify about how people are never leaving their offices, but they're also being distracted? I was confused on that one.
Oh, okay. So fewer distractions, and you never leave your workspace, as in like your home is your workspace. So you're never necessarily not at work.
Okay. And why are your outside connections being affected by remote work? Because if you're remote working and you're not interacting with people anyway, then how are your outside connections being affected by that?
Can you specify when I said that in my speech?
In your third contention, I think. Maybe I misunderstood you.
I don't remember saying that in my speech. I said that you need to learn nonverbal communication so you can bring it into the outside world.
Okay.
Great. Thank you, speakers. That is your time. All right, next up we have Elena, who is going to present her speech and be cross-examined by Niharika.
Just 1 second to get the timer.
Absolutely.
Is this an okay position?
Perfect.
All right. Starting in 3, 2, 1. Think back to March of 2020. The world was struck by a public health crisis in the form of COVID-19, and we were all left wondering how we were going to continue our jobs and our education. But thankfully, technology offered us an answer. Platforms like Google Meet, Google Classroom, Microsoft Teams, and Zoom became wildly popular because they offered us the ability to continue our lives. And a silver lining came out of this pandemic. We learned just how practical remote work can be. So, I affirm the resolution that remote work, where practical, is on balance more advantageous than in-office work because of 3 main reasons: the economic advantages, the personal advantages, and the environmental advantages. But before I begin, I'd like to draw your attention to the where practical part of this resolution. Where practical means when it makes sense or when it works, which offers up hybrid work, a mix of remote work and in-office work, which is exactly what the pro side is advocating for, applying the advantages of remote work in the real world. So to begin, the economic advantages of remote work. According to The Hill, in 2020, Microsoft experienced a 10% boost in hours spent working across their workers in the transition to remote work. Now, in the same article, it was written that workers gained 2+ hours of work time per week when they did not commute. This allowed them to be 35 to 40% more productive than their in-office counterparts, according to Global Workplace Analytics. Additionally, it saved employers $10,000 per employee per year when they didn't have to rent out office space. All of this money is siphoning back into the company and could potentially boost worker wages, in addition to saving them $8,466 when they do not commute. So working remotely saves companies and workers money, while also making companies and workers money, altogether fueling our economy. Secondly, the personal advantages of remote work. 71% of people who worked remotely said it helped balance their work and their life, according to Forbes. Now, Harvard says that with a better work-life balance, we can boost productivity, reduce turnover. In a Stanford study, it was shown to be reduced by as much as 33%, and boost mental and physical health. We have a huge mental health crisis in this country, as 1 in 5 adults struggle with mental illness, according to the National Institutes for Health.
If we can take even some steps to reduce some of the triggers that lead to things like anxiety and depression, why wouldn't we take those steps? So with remote work, we can have a happier workforce who is more stable in their jobs, reducing the number of unemployed workers, which all siphons back in to continue to boost our economy. Now lastly, the environmental impact of remote work. 28% of greenhouse gases in the United States come from transportation, according to the EPA. Greenhouse gases are gases such as carbon dioxide and methane, and they contribute to our climate crisis. However, Sun Microsystems saved 32,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide across its 24,000 employees when it switched to hybrid work. 32,000 metric tons. That all would have been emitted if they had been commuting, but it wasn't because they worked remotely. Office energy consumption is also 2 times that of home offices. And where does most of that energy come from today? Fossil fuels, which burn to create greenhouse gases and contribute to climate change. Climate change causes natural disasters like floods, wildfires, and hurricanes, which take lives and destroy property. So climate change negatively impacts our economy and our public health. And by taking steps to reduce our emissions, we can make an impact. So to summarize, remote work, where practical, is on balance more advantageous than in-office work because of 3 reasons: the economic advantages, the personal advantages, and the environmental advantages. So now that we know that remote work does work, why should we go back? To move into the future of work with me, please vote pro in this debate. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Elena. All right, and Enrico, whenever you're ready to cross-examine, go ahead and come off mute and we can get started.
Okay. Can you please repeat your 3 claims for me, please?
Sure. The economic advantages of remote work, the personal advantages of remote work, and the environmental advantages of remote work.
Okay, thank you. So you said that people are 45% more active at home rather than in the office, correct?
I did. I said they're 45%, 30 to 45% more productive.
Okay. What about those people who aren't able to self-control themselves, especially like Gen Z workers?
I mean, I think that that's a minority, and I also don't necessarily have any statistics on that, but I do know that many studies have shown that overall workers are more productive.
Okay. You said that the working from home can boost your mental health, correct?
Yes. I said, well, working from home creates a better work-life balance, which in some cases has been found to boost mental health. Yes.
Okay. Do you think one can be more, so do you have the statistics that show what mental illness they struggle with?
No, but I know that many mental illnesses such as anxiety and depression are very common in the United States.
Okay. Can't you, so you talked about the environmental benefits, correct?
Yes, I do.
Mm-hmm. So you said that the energy that comes from the work offices is like, can you give me that specific number?
Yeah, office energy consumption is 2 times that of home offices.
Okay. I don't have any other further questions.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right. So that means that next up we have Arna, who is going to be cross-examined by Elena. Arna, whenever you're ready, go ahead and come off mute. I'm going to mute myself.
Give me a minute. I'm just going to put on a timer.
Perfect.
Is this good? During March of 2020, my school was put into remote learning. And at first, it didn't seem too bad. Sure, we could stay on our computers longer, and we got to sleep in more. But it made me feel lonely. All of these benefits seemed great, but I couldn't hang out with my friends, I couldn't meet my teachers, and I had no recess. Everything just seemed so isolating. Just like it was isolating for me to learn remotely, it's exactly like that in the minds of millions of remote workers across the globe. I believe remote work, where practical, is on balance less advantageous than in-office work for two main reasons. To begin with my first reason, which is office camaraderie drives productivity. According to an Envoy study from September of 2023, 72%, 72% of people have either left a job because communications are bad or admit that the place they now work in is communicating poorly. Within the same study, the majority, or 60% of employees, said that friendships made in the workplace help drive a sense of belonging at work along with productivity. According to researchers Mr. Gibbs, Mengel, and Seamroth from UChicago, they estimated that the shift to remote work decreased average labor productivity by 8 to 19%. This is caused by lack of communication, barriers to mentoring, and issues with self-motivation. This is important because the more isolation within the workplace, the more likely the person would want to quit. Studies from Harvard Business School and Oxford have shown that happy employees lead to more productivity. It also helps make a person feel more welcome at their job, as well as help them achieve more overall. Moving on to my second reason, which is remote work undermines your well-being. According to John Messenger's research study from Eurofound, an official EU foundation from January of 2024, 41% of remote workers felt stressed, compared to only 25% of those who continued to work in the office. Of the same group, 42% had trouble sleeping, while only 29% reported the same. Secondly, the Diagnostic Eye Center states, remote work necessitates sitting in front of a computer for multiple hours daily. This is generally not good for your body and can lead to side effects like back pain, eye strain, and even migraines. You're also exposed to more blue light from your computer screen, which can cause dry eye and disrupt your sleep schedule. This is relevant because even though remote work might seem efficient, its impact to our mental and physical health is simply not. When we aren't held to in-office expectations, we tend to lose our drive, our purpose, our meaning. Whereas when you go to an office, you're required to be presentable, move around, and engage with your coworkers. So, in conclusion, remote work, where practical, is on balance less advantageous than in-office work because office camaraderie drives productivity and remote work undermines your well-being. Just like I felt isolated and stressed with remote learning, remote work does exactly the same to millions. By choosing to work in an office, we're not just showing up for a job, no. We're making connections, boosting productivity, and safeguarding our well-being. Do we really want to live in a world where we're always at home, but never truly connected? If not, judges, I strongly urge you to vote con. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Arna. Alina, when you are ready to start cross-examination, go ahead.
In your first point, you bring up that about the large percentage of people have left a job because communications were bad. Were these specifically because communications were bad because of remote work or just communications were bad?
Remote work, because so the study actually showed that it was caused by remote work because, communications online aren't as great as communications compared to an office.
You also say that friendships are boosting productivity, but why can't coworkers have friendships with people online? You can text, you can email, you can still meet up outside. Is there something that explicitly prohibits people making friendships online?
Well, I believe that just like I talked about my online school experience, even though I was making friends online, it wasn't necessarily the same as when I went in person. And it's the same thing with a job because you just need that face-to-face connection. So like humans naturally they crave human attention. They want to be
Thank you.
face-to-face with someone and talk.
And then you also said that happier workers boost productivity, but why can't people be happy when they're working online? They can spend more time with their families, they can get out and exercise more, and they can see their friends outside, like their friends from outside of work, and maintain different relationships. Why can't people be happy working online?
Well, I feel that there is no work-life balance when you're online because you're working in the same environment, you're eating in the same environment, you're sleeping in the same environment, you're watching TV in the same environment. So I feel like it's not necessarily, you don't really have a balance in what you're doing. And I feel like that's like just like I talked
Thank
with my
you.
point, talked
Thank
about
you.
with my points.
Additionally, you bring up later on that people are spending more time in front of their screens when they're working remotely. But in an office, aren't you still using a computer? There are several features that you need computers for, and you're still sitting down. And it's like there's less time to get outside and exercise because you can't leave the office when you're doing work.
Well, although you might be sitting on a screen, you're not sitting on a screen for as many hours as you do online. Because when you're sitting online, you're having meetings with coworkers online. But when you go to an office, you're talking to people face to face. So that also takes away a lot of time.
But with more flexibility within your schedule, could you
End of your time. So sorry. I know we have so many more things to say. No, I understand. Our last but not least speaker is Stella. So Stella, go ahead and stand up, come off mute whenever you're ready. I'm going to mute myself and you can get started.
Okay, thank
Stella,
you.
can you do me a big favor really quick? Can you take this sleeve of your jacket and just wipe your camera? I think it's a little dirty and I want to make sure we can see it. I
Okay,
just want to
sorry.
make sure we can see you. Perfect.
All right, is that a bit better?
Perfect. Thank you. Appreciate
All
it.
right. Let me just set the timer, and if everyone is ready, I will begin my opening speech. Okay. I will begin in 3, 2, 1. Imagine this scenario. You've just gotten into remote work and it's your first week. You think you have a versatile schedule and a good work-life balance. But then as time passes by, you start to get wrapped in this vicious cycle of loneliness and reduced quality of life. And you start to realize that the things people told you about remote work weren't true for you at all. This leads me to my argument. Remote work, where practical, is less advantageous than in-office work. But before I begin, what is remote work? It's any work that is done outside of a traditional office, whether that's at a personal office, outside of home, or at home. Leading to my first contention, the direct collaboration. In-office jobs have a more structured environment that remote work doesn't have. The ability to have spontaneous conversations and brainstorming sessions deepen bonds between coworkers and increase productivity. According to Forbes, 20% more ideas are created by in-office workers than remote workers. Additionally, 70% of workers value the relationships at work just as much as the job itself. Humans biologically crave connections, but at remote work, you don't have that benefit. Forbes also says that remote work is associated with 20% decreased productivity. Additionally, 60% of remote workers are not delivered important information that in-office workers receive. This leads to overall decreased productivity and efficiency, which leads me to my next point, the ambiguous work-life balance. According to Klaxoon, remote workers experience more workloads and higher expectations, leading to unnecessary pressure. It's harder to find that balance between work and life. The working harder to satisfy employer demands can lead to burnout. According to Forbes, 50% of remote workers experience constant stress. And while it may seem more self-paced, ironically, it may be harder to find that balance. Because when you're working in the same environment that you also have your personal life in, it's very difficult to establish a solid line between the two. And it's also difficult to enjoy social life outside of work, leading to my final contention, the devastating mental health. According to HRO Today, remote workers are 98% more likely to experience loneliness than in-office workers. The little to no interaction leads to lost connections, and it's much easier to feel alone. And this also ties into suicide. According to SHP Online, 40% of remote workers experience suicidal thoughts some or all of the time. According to the US government, around 162,000 people commit suicide from loneliness annually. Additionally, Nexus Health states that staring at a screen for long periods of time, which remote workers often do, can cause behavioral dysregulation, decrease social abilities, and increase stress. So remote work can lead to severe detriments overall in mental health and social energy, and could potentially lead to suicide, especially in a world where mental health is so important and prevalent. So, in conclusion, while remote work may sound like a dream, upon further consideration and summarization of my aforementioned points, the decision to choose remote work over in-office work must be rethought. If you enjoy a worse structured environment, a blurry work-life balance, and an overall decrease in mental health leading to decreased productivity, happiness, and overall quality of life, then choose remote work. If you're ever caught in a dilemma between remote and in-person work, your best interest is to choose the latter. Therefore, I implore my esteemed judges to choose the side of the con. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Stella. And it looks like Arna is ready to go with cross-examination. So go ahead, Arna, whenever you're ready.
All right, 3, 2. You talk, one of your points is direct collaboration, correct?
Correct.
Well, if everyone is working around, like, at the same time online, can't they just like go on calls or ping each other?
That's true, but when you have the physical verbal cues that in office work, it actually enhances communication.
Right, so couldn't even, okay, even if I slightly agree with you, then can't they just meet outside of office and, maybe like collaborate if they really want to collaborate so badly?
But in office, you get to hit two birds with one stone, so you don't have to meet outside in order to be able to collaborate.
All right, thank you. You also talk about work-life balance, correct?
Correct.
Well, wouldn't you have a better work-life balance at home because you could, you could like go meet your friends and you could like, you have a flexible schedule and you're kind of like in the comfort of your own home?
Even if you're in the comfort of your own home, it is difficult to establish the line between work and home, as I've already stated. And going out with friends, it's easier to meet friends like outside of work when it's easier to meet friends in an office environment than in a remote environment.
All right. You also talk about how, we sit on computers for longer periods of time, correct?
Yeah.
Well, aren't you doing the same thing at an office? Because with new technology, such as like, Microsoft bringing up new technology where you have to like, technically be online to do all your work and submit everything, it's just easier. So wouldn't you just spend the same amount of hours?
Not necessarily. Remote work is almost 100% on computer, but in office, you get to be off the computers, talk with your coworkers, have meetings outside of the computers, and so on.
All right, thank you. That's all I have.
Speakers that, yep, that is time.